Hey guys, Ryan Douglas here, and I'm in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. The year is 2020. What an amazing year to be alive. As I'm standing here in Kuala Lumpur, I was reflecting upon the last time that I was in this beautiful country about 4 years ago. The year was 2016, and it was in May when I was traveling around Malaysia for 3 months. I found myself on the east coast in Kuantan, and it was at that point by synchro destiny I met up with a Spaniard. I was traveling with a beautiful lady from Sweden at the time, and we stayed on the beach and met this man who had just finished this meditation course. And it was by chance that we had ran into him because we had the intention to do such a course at some point during our time in Malaysia. And he had just finished this 10-day Vipassana that he was raving about. He was just so ecstatic to share and talk about this event that he had done in the middle of the jungle in Malaysia, and he told us, you must do it, you must do it. So we looked online very quickly and we found that in 3 days' time there was exactly 2 spots left for me and my friend to go and do it. And so we decided to sign up and do it straight away. And it was from that point on, 2 days later we were off, and we hitchhiked all the way to the jungle in the middle of Malaysia. And it was an amazing opportunity because we arrived, we had to drive through this forest, this palm oil forest, and through the middle of it we were kind of like, where are we going? And we were hitchhiking with this lady who was taking us there, and neither of us had been there before. But once we arrived, we got to this big gated community, and as we entered, they told us that we must leave our bags, our laptops, our cameras, our phones, our books, everything we must leave behind. We must leave it safely with them as we journey into this opportunity to go 10 days through a deep transcendental meditation experience. And it was an absolutely incredible opportunity. I had no idea what I was in for. As I was stepping into it, I was thinking, yeah, I'm ready for this, I'm prepared, I've been practicing meditation, and this is going to be an amazing opportunity. But little did I know that it was going to radically change my life. In fact, change my life in 3 major areas. First, in the physical realm, second, in the emotional, and lastly, in the spiritual. As I stepped into the meditation center, everyone had their own little room, and you meditate for 10 hours per day, every single day. So you're sitting in a hall with over 100 people, cross-legged, right next to each other, just spanned out across the hall. And you wake up, the bell rings at 4 a.m., big gong, and by 4:30 you're practicing for the first 2 hours set. You continue this all day, practicing for an hour, then 2 hours, all the way until 9 o'clock at night, where the teacher shares a beautiful little discourse on guiding you on the process of the meditation. And it's not until the 3rd day that you actually start to absorb the true technique that they offer. And what's so beautiful about this is it's a technique that has been passed down through generations of teachers. And the teacher that I had the privilege of being guided under was S.N. Gawainka. He's now passed away, but the videos and the technique of how to meditate still lives, and I had the amazing opportunity to partake in this. And so the first huge lesson that I learned that came to me in the physical experience was overcoming the mental block that I had in my own mind to sit still, cross-legged for a full hour. Now, at this time in my life, I had just finished my 3rd and final knee operation after injuring my knee playing football in the United States, and I had a lot of inflammation and problems with my joints. So sitting cross-legged even for 5 minutes was a challenge, let alone 1 hour. And I remember the time exactly when I was sitting there cross-legged every day. The one lesson that they encourage you and teach you is persistence, to continue to be persistent in your practice. And so it was about day 7 where I was lying there, and I remember the first day as I was sitting there in meditation for the first group session of an hour, I must have uncrossed my leg about 100 times. Almost every minute I felt numb, I felt the pain, it was hard to keep them crossed. But it was on day 7 where I was finally able to sit cross-legged with my eyes closed in full deep meditation for the first time. And I remember it was almost like I was getting so close to the end, and I had reached this point. It was like I was running a marathon, and I had come across this heavy, heavy brick wall. And finally, I was able to just like punch my way through the wall, break through it, and come out the other side. And I felt ecstatic to be able to sit there for a full hour with my legs crossed. And that really made me realize at that point that anything is truly possible. when I put my mind to it, when you put your mind to it, you can achieve anything you want, even if it is a physical transformation through your body. I thought that undergoing 3 knee operations, there's no way I'd be able to sit cross-legged for that amount of time. And suddenly, over a continuous, consistent, persistent practice, being diligent and doing it every day for 10 hours a day, I was able to break through that and overcome the limitations that I had in my own mind. And so that was the first really transcendental breakthrough that I had. The second was in the emotional body, in the mental capacity that we all have as human beings. And I remember it was actually the next day, once I'd broken through this physical barrier, that I was meditating there by myself, obviously in a hall of 100 people, but had my eyes closed and I was journeying deep within me. And I then had this flash. It was like a dream, very vivid, like that my father was there. He was very present and he was with me in the experience that was going on in my mind. And suddenly I was overruled with these feelings of anger and extreme sadness. It was almost like I wanted to cry and I wanted to scream and shout and yell. I was just flooded with emotion. My whole body, I could feel it from my head down to my toes. Keeping in mind the practice of meditation is focusing on the bodily sensations. So during the whole time of the 10 days, for 10 hours a day, focusing on the subtle sensations that are arising as you sit there in stillness. And the sensations can be anything from heat to coolness, from itchiness to sweat. All of these are sensations that the body's experiencing as you sit in stillness. And to observe them, to notice them, really explore what's coming up in the stillness. Do I need to scratch? Do I need to move? And then really understanding the fundamental laws of nature through my own experience. Through my own physical body, I can understand that everything in the world is changing. In fact, that's the only permanent there is, change. And so this idea of impermanence really starts to instill, not just in the body, but also in the mind. And what was going on in my mind at that moment when I was seeing my father, I was having these really intense feelings of anger, this resentment that had been building up inside me ever since I was a young boy, these emotions that I'd bottled up for such a long time. And then suddenly this vision of my father dying and passing away brought a new sensation through my body, and I had these feelings of ecstasy and joy and pleasure, and it brought me like a happiness almost to see that my father had died. And at the time I was extremely confused. I thought, how could this be? Why am I feeling happy to see my dad die? It didn't quite make sense to me at the time, but in the years after processing this journey, I've realized that it all stemmed back to a moment in my childhood when I was a young boy, and reliving those emotions that I wasn't able to fully express at the time were suddenly resurfacing. I had buried them so far deep down that I didn't want to look at, and I was afraid to share openly and honestly and to express as it should be done in the time, but I had shut them out. And it was almost like this pot of water that was on boil and suddenly simmering, bubbling up to the top, and it exploded at the top, and the emotions that were running through my body were just overloading at the time, almost overwhelming. And so what I started to understand was that the experience that I had as a young boy, where I had to swallow these emotions at the time, were now being relived, resurfaced when I was in the stillness. And the way that I can explain this is if I had a glass jar of water that had some dirt, and that glass jar was always moving around and shaking, the dirt would become very, very murky. The water, you wouldn't be able to see through it, there would be so much dirt. But what happens if you hold that jar of water still is the dirt slowly rests to the bottom. The water suddenly becomes very clear, and it's very easy to see the mud at the bottom. And that's what I realized was going on in my subconscious. These deeper patternings that were at play in my mind were now suddenly becoming very clear. Very clear that I needed to work through, that I needed to resolve this unresolved emotional trauma from my childhood. And this was one huge breakthrough that I experienced during my time doing the Vipassana, that I now relate to a deeper emotional opportunity to resolve, essentially. And so the third and final breakthrough that I had was in the spiritual realm, when I was sitting there in meditation, it took me 11 days. From the day 11, one day after the retreat was supposed to be done, I remember sitting there in the hall. There was many of us, and I had gone to this new place, this new transcendental place where it was like I was levitating above my body, and my spirit was exiting. It was almost like I was astral traveling, astral projecting, and I was going outside of my body, raising higher and higher and higher and higher, and going up and up and up and up, until at one point I was so far up, I looked back at myself and I could see myself in the hall, cross-legged, sitting there. And I had these overriding feelings of extreme connection, joy. It was like a warmth of welcoming home. I'd never felt so much of a sense of belonging in my life. And I had no idea what I was going through or what I was really experiencing. And I was sort of reflecting back to my body. I kind of thought, what is actually happening to me? It was more like an ethereal energy that I was feeling. And in a moment, I was kind of jolted and slowly came back into my body and opened my eyes and found myself there sitting cross-legged in the hall again, back in my physical body. And after this experience, it's kind of a wild journey to be on. And you might be thinking, what relevance does that all have, and what do I take from that lesson? Well, it wasn't until after the meditation that I started chatting to other people about their experience, when one of them shared a very similar story to mine. And it was at that point I knew that my story was not the only one, and my experience was real. And what I take away from that is that the lessons I learned through that experience was that I knew foundationally that I am more than just a physical body. I am a spiritual soul having a human physical experience. And when I was able to resolve a lot of my unresolved emotional trauma that I was holding on to like a backpack, carrying it around with me all that time, so far, so deep inside my own subconscious mind. But when I was ready to let go of that and resolve that and allow it to be, suddenly I was able to step into this new realm of existence that took me to a higher level of awareness, where I was able to see it from a new perspective and see that my truth as a human being was more than just this physical experience. And the amount of unconditional connection and belonging and ultimately love that brought to me was profound, absolutely incredible. And so after the Vipassana, it took me some time to really process and understand what's going on. I mean, now it's 4 years down the line since I've done the retreat, and it feels amazing to understand these fundamental truths of our human existence, but it makes me curious to want to discover more. And I realize that there is so much more to discover, and I'm ready to do another Vipassana, and I encourage you as well. If these stories resonate, or you're curious, or it sparks an inquisitive passion to explore yourself a little bit more, I highly encourage you to explore what a Vipassana meditation is. You can find these centers all over the world, in fact. There's 4 in Australia, there's many across Europe, the United States, South America, plenty in Asia. And it's absolutely privileged to share this journey with you. And if you have done a Vipassana, maybe let me know about your experience in the comments below. I would really love to hear from you all and see if you've also identified or had some life-changing moments that have brought you to this place of total acceptance, total transformation, and brought you to a place where you can understand yourself more and your place within the world. So thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.